What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the video, and today I'm going to be giving a quick rundown on swapping an Ls7 clutch into your first gen CTS-V. It gets rid of the dual mass flywheel, the factory like 50-pound dual mass flywheel. It, is a cheaper alternative than just replacing the stock clutch and that dual mass flywheel, and it's just an all-around better clutch. So I'll show you guys basically the rundown. I'm not gonna make you watch me pull the clutch out of the car. One, because I got it out of the car already and I didn't record it, and it's nothing exciting. So I have two T56s here between both the V's, and I'll show you guys basically the approach to taking it out of the car, and just give you some comparisons between the Ls7 clutch and the stock dual mass flywheel clutch that I actually still have the old one from the Drift V right here. So let's get started. So right here on the floor, we have the T56, the bell housing, and the old Ls7 clutch that was in the black V. I've had an Ls7 clutch. That one had about 65,000 miles. It's been a while since it's been on the car, maybe more, but I was running into an issue with a grinding sound basically while driving. And it sounded like it was coming from the clutch area, and it was only while the car was moving and whatnot. I thought it was the one-piece drive shaft that's standing up over there, but it turns out it wasn't. So I basically decided, hey, it's time to put a clutch in this thing. Now, looking at the clutch, you can see on the pressure plate here and on the clutch disc here, there is some uneven wear. Drop a comment below if you guys think, if you guys have any ideas of what the cause of that could be. It looked the same on the flywheel side. Like, it looked like it was grabbing inside, not out here. But, I mean, this clutch has definitely been, slipped, and driven hard and burnt up pretty good, like once. But, this thing, while the clutch disc still looks like it had some life on it, it did start slipping on me, and I'm hoping that this noise that I was experiencing was clutch related, because if that thing has issues and I put this thing all back together, nothing will make me want to, boot this thing off a cliff and into the ocean more than that. Additionally, on the GM LS transmissions, they have an internal slave cylinder with a non-serviceable throwout bearing. Listen to this. This throwout bearing had some play like this, but the new one does as well, but it's noisy. So I'm thinking that can be a contributing factor to my issue. And I was also looking online, and I saw some things about guys having issues with pilot bearing failures causing loud noises and whatnot on these transmissions. So transmission removal is rather easy. It just takes some time, and it takes some wiggling and some convincing and some lifting and some lowering. And basically you unbolt the transmission from the bell housing first. So unplug everything, take your exhaust off, take your drive shaft off, undo your shifter. Your shifter bolts through this plate right here, and then there's a plate inside the car that bolts to this piece here. So you'll have to take your shifter out. If it's a stock shifter and this hasn't been done yet, you're gonna have to drill out these two rivets. If you have an aftermarket shifter, they should be bolts by now. So you just unbolt it here, unbolt it there. They're all, I think, 10 mils. Well, at least these guys are 10 mils inside the car. And then you take the bolt for your shifter out of this linkage, and you unbolt your drive shaft from the back of the transmission. Now, what that does is it basically frees up everything behind the transmission. Moving forward, you're going to take out the bolts that go around the transmission that bolted to the bell housing. Those are going to be your black bolts. There's going to be 8 of those bolts, and once those are all out and you remove all the wiring, you can ultimately strap the transmission to a transmission jack and finagle that thing off. Now, there's some dowel pins that like to get stuck, so be careful, but there are some tabs to pry from, and use a pry bar to knock that thing loose. Be careful though, because it is cast aluminum. Now, Then you're going to go and take your bell housing off. There's 8 bolts for that as well. Those are the silver bolts. So these are all 13 millimeter bolts. Well, these guys are 13 millimeter bolts. These guys are 15 millimeter bolts. So this top one, you're going to have to do from the engine bay. This one I had to do from the engine bay as well because I was struggling to separate these two in the car, but you might not have to do this one. The rest you can get to from behind the car. Now you also need a lot of extension. In order to get to these bolts, I found that I ended up having to get an extension or stack extensions that went all the way back to behind the transmission. Now, while that takes away a lot of leverage, I used a ratchet and a piece of pipe and busted my knuckles, but I got the bolts broken loose and got them out. The replacement, you may ask, the exact same Luck clutch kit that I have in the car, or had in the car. Looks a little fresher than before. And we have our pressure plate there. And then this kit also comes with a new pilot bearing that, since it's an Ls7 clutch kit, you can reuse this pilot bearing, I believe, in the Ls2s. It has some spline lubricant and it has the clutch alignment tool. It also came with a slave cylinder. As I mentioned, the throwout bearing making noise. I mean, this one doesn't really have as much play. I mean, there is supposed to be some movement in it, but it is silent when you spin it. So this is the one that comes with the kit. Now, since it's for an LS7 in a Corvette, it's going to come with this short little bleeder valve. Now the bleeder valve goes right into here. And the issue you're going to run into is that this bleeder valve will not poke out past the CTS-V bell housing. So you can either take your stock CTS-V bleeder valve, which I have on here, and feed that in. It's the same thread pitch, but you'll be able to bleed it through the top there, and you'll have to bleed it through the bottom of the car. Or, now this is a new one for me because I don't want to have to bleed it through the bottom of the car like I did last time. Thankfully, last time we did this job, it was on a lift. So when someone was up in the car, someone was under the lift, it was pretty easy. I got myself a Tick Performance speed bleeder kit for the first gen CTS-V. That is part number. I'll show you guys the part number here. It's this guy right there, Tick Performance TPS BL5G. And it's for the Corvettes, the SS, the G8, the ATS-V, and the 04 to 07 CTS-V. What this will do is it'll allow me to run this line all the way up into the engine bay, basically hang it over a red cup, crack this speed bleeder, and pump away on the clutch pedal until there's no more air. Also, I'll be able to periodically, maybe every few months or so, crack the speed bleeder open and give it a few pumps just to keep air out of the clutch, keep a good clutch pedal, and not really have to worry about it. The line, the feed line, is a little longer than the stock line, but it's not too hard to finagle up in there. You really don't need this metal piece. You can pop that off. This is just heat shielded, the rubber line part, and just make sure it's away from the exhaust when you tuck it around, and yeah, you should be good. This guy just pops right onto the factory master cylinder. So it's raining outside right now for the first time in Florida in a while. It doesn't really rain much in the winter apparently. But what I'm gonna do is once it stops raining, we're gonna pick this video up. I'm just gonna go outside and lay it on the trailer. The stock dual mass flywheel clutch from the CTS-V, the Drift V that I still have, and I'll show you guys a comparison between the two.
Many minutes later.
What's going on, guys? So we're gonna jump back. I know I'm mid-video here, but from where we left off, I was showing you guys the Ls7 clutch, which I'll show you another look at. And I brought in the stock dual mass flywheel clutch that's been sitting in the yard from the Drift V because I still had the stock clutch on it. This car has had an Ls7 clutch on it for a while. So got the clutch for the Drift V. So I'll show you guys the differences side by side. So just taking a look at this thing, the flywheel is like 3 inches tall. This whole thing is the flywheel. And then we have our pressure plate on top. Mind you, it's all rusty. It's been sitting out in the yard just because I got to take it to the scrap yard. And we have our clutch disc. So, wow, very rusty. So this clutch actually had some life left in it, which is pretty crazy. I don't know if it's ever been replaced. I'm sure it has. The car had 237,000 miles on it. But the crazy thing is this dual mass flywheel weighs like 47 pounds. So it's pretty absurd compared to the stock Ls7 flywheel that I just got installed. You can see it peeking there onto the motor. And this is the Ls7 clutch. We got the clutch disc, we got the luck pressure plate, and it's exactly what I'm putting into the car. Just a fresh version, because as you can see, I burnt this one up and it was making all kinds of crazy noises, and it just reached the end of its lifespan. There's still some meat on the clutch, but it's done. It still worked. It was just making noise, and I'm assuming it was the clutch, whether it be the clutch or the pilot bearing or what, I don't know, but we're doing all the new stuff. Now, also, to accommodate for the difference in size, because obviously with a single mass Ls7 flywheel, it is going to be a shorter clutch unit. You need to use a Ls7 slave cylinder. You could get an adapter piece to space out the stock CTS-V slave, but when you order the Luck kit off of Rock Auto, the whole Luck rep set kit comes with everything you need. I just got the flywheel on. Morgan came out and helped me, just held the pry bar on the one of the gear teeth on the flywheel. Got that all torqued down at 74 foot-pounds. I have ARP bolts, so I put some new, I cleaned them all off with brake clean and whatnot, and I put some new ARP assembly lube on there as well. My pressure plate bolts are also ARP. That's what I did when I did the Ls7 clutch the first time. So same deal, I cleaned them all off with brake clean. I'm gonna put some ARP assembly lube on there as well. Torque them down to, I think, like 36 foot-pounds, I think it was, something along those lines. And I basically got all the other bolts all cleaned up and ready to go. So I'm gonna start the installation process by bringing the clutch disc, the alignment tool, the pressure plate, and the pressure plate bolts all down underneath the car, and we'll jump back in under there. Luck includes this little packet of spline lubricant. So we're just gonna squeeze this out on the transmission, and we'll work it into the splines. I think they only give you this little pack because you don't want to overdo it, because like if you over grease the splines, any excess grease could potentially run out onto the clutch or flywheel, and ultimately, you know, deteriorate, because you don't want something slippery on something that's supposed to be grabbing. So under here we have the flywheel. Like I said, flywheel, ARP bolts, new pilot bearing right there in the middle. And what I'm gonna do is just spray the surface with some brake clean, wipe it down, make sure any grease, fingerprints, etc. are off, and then we will put the pressure plate and clutch disc on. So let's get after it. That one on. Oh. All right, we're on. Jeez. Okay, we still got the alignment tool in there. We're in on the dowel pins. All right, there you have it. We got the full Ls7 clutch installed. All the bolts on the pressure plate are torqued down to 52 foot-pounds. Pulled the alignment tool out once it was all tight, and it looks like we are good to go to start installing the bell housing. Bell housing is in. I got the locator, like dowel pins, and the hole for that one covered in Never Sees. Surprisingly, I didn't get covered in Never Sees, but all the bolts are Never Sees. I just put a little around each bolt hole for the transmission, and just like on the face of the bell housing, just to prevent it from getting stuck. All right, so I haven't updated in a while, but the transmission is in down there, and right now we're bleeding the clutch. So I've just been going through. Now, I never had a speed bleeder before, so the clutch fluid that was in the master and the reservoir was old and disgusting. So it's basically at this point just flushing out all the crap that is basically built up inside the master cylinder. So when the pedal gets pumped, when the pedal gets pumped, it basically has this, you can keep going. It basically has this check valve in the speed bleeder that allows it to, it's a little ball valve that allows it to not suck any air out. So I can just keep doing this. And, all right, hold on one sec. And just sit here and keep topping off the reservoir while Morgan's pumping. And ultimately, I'm just flushing out all of the old clutch fluid that was in the master cylinder and just keep going. I mean, all that dark black stuff came out at first, but it's starting to clear up. You can go ahead. Yeah, we're basically getting clear fluid now, finally. No air bubbles, haven't seen air bubbles in a while. So probably after this one, I think we'll call it. So then all I have to do is tighten up this valve and top off the reservoir, and we're pretty much good to go. I'll just kind of probably just tuck this down like along the air box, like down in there. I have a little rubber cap for it that I robbed off of the bleeder that was on the old slave cylinder, and then wrap it up. So this will be it for tonight. Morgan helped me put the shifter back in and just do this bleed sequence. So tomorrow I'll come back out, do the drive shaft, do the exhaust. We'll get this thing on the ground. It's too late to start it to see if it goes into gear and stuff, but other than that, get it back on the ground and see if it works. All right, guys, jumping back in, it's the next day. So I wrapped up last night with the transmission in. You can see here, Morgan helped me with getting the shifter assembly all bolted back in. I have the Hearst shifter on this car. So we got that all bolted back up. All the linkage is in check. And now I just need to get the drive shaft over there. Get that bolted up to the trans, get the carrier bearing bolted right back up here, and then bolted up to the diff. Then we'll drag the exhaust in and get that hung, and I think then it's basically just time to start it. I'll make sure that, you know, everything is plugged back in, do a once over, and we'll try and get this thing started. Okay, so to wrap this video up, have you guys ever put a clutch in a car just to realize that the car didn't need a clutch? So I came to the realization yesterday, got the whole car back together, and basically took it for a test drive. Clutch felt good, we got it bled and everything, and it was still making the same noise that it was making before. Turns out the exhaust was rubbing the drive shaft. So between this exhaust getting cut up and modified 3 or 4 different times, changing motor mounts, and all of that, it was causing it to rub. So what I did, there's a little cross beam on the bottom, you guys will know. I got some hose clamps. I clamped it down, pulled the exhaust down so it can't move up, because basically what was happening was the exhaust was moving up into the drive shaft. It wasn't constantly touching it. So now I have some tension pulling down on the exhaust, and it won't allow it to move upward. It's okay, it's working. I've driven it, we're good, but I'm kicking myself. But hey, it happens. I mean, looking at it, it was gonna need a clutch again soon anyways, especially after I toasted that flywheel and the clutch disc and the pressure plate back on 4th of July. So the car's on the ground. I had to bleed the clutch a couple times just to make sure, get the good clutch feel back into it. The speed bleeder comes in handy. We just got it tucked up there behind the air box. It's honestly, it's fantastic. Well worth the extra 50 bucks if you're ever doing a clutch, Ls7 clutch or whatever clutch on these cars. I'm running the drift spares on here right now. These fronts barely fit. They're rubbing a little bit on dips and stuff, but just enough to get me around the neighborhood. And this thing feels great. Like, I'm super hyped. It feels amazing. It feels so good to get behind the wheel of this thing. Got the engine all cleaned up. It's running good. Like, I drove it to the gas station. I broke my shifter, but we fixed it. The 2 bolts that go through right in front of the shifter there, those 2 bolts, they were stripping. So I just drilled the holes out bigger, put some standard bolts and nuts on the backside. We tightened it up. Shifter's nice and tight now, and we are good to go. This thing is all set. So I hope you guys enjoyed this whole video. It's been a long process to get this clutch done in the car just because we were waiting on things. And then we just come to find out that I didn't even have to do it. But either way, I hope you guys found this video helpful, informative, and you know, make sure you subscribe, stay tuned. We're gonna be hitting the red car. We got stuff coming in this week. I think stuff's gonna start coming in today. So we got stuff coming in this week, and maybe later this week or early next week, we'll have the red car running. So I'm hyped. The clutch will be here, the oil cooler will be here, and we're gonna get rocking and rolling on the red car. So I feel like getting the black V done was kind of like my extra little push to just motivate me. It feels so good. Like, I can't even describe it. It feels so good seeing this thing in the driveway together, running, driving, because it has been literally months, like 6 months since I've driven it. It feels good. So thank you for watching, guys. Drop a comment below if you're here this far. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Just drop a comment below and let me know you did. See you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, and have a good rest of the day.